here. We're going to break down the quarterfinal playoff games, talk transfer portal, and so we'll get things rolling with Miami and Ohio State. Sweets, what were your thoughts on that game?
First of all, hats off to Miami. Hell of a job, defensively. If you look at the stats, Carson Beck didn't set the world on fire, but he did enough. He didn't do anything stupid. Didn't turn the ball over. Controlled the game. But that defense looked like they did in September and early October, and we talked about that the other night. I said if that defense plays like they did early, they can beat anybody. They did, and they did. And so now, now we move on to the next game against Ole Miss. That's going to be a great game. But I'm gonna tell you what, Miami. Yeah, I don't know if anybody could beat them if that defense is playing like they did the other day. Kev, what are your thoughts?
So Ruben Bain, everybody, a lot of hype coming into the season. Everybody talked top five pick. Even though their defense got off to a good start early, he was kind of average. Obviously, that has changed. He is been one of the best players in the playoffs. The first weekend they had 7 sacks, and they're upset over A&M. This weekend they had 5 sacks, or not weekend. Yesterday they had, or 2 days ago, Miami had 5 quarterback sacks. So 12 sacks in 2 games between for their defense. And Bain has just been a terror. If he's not in the backfield sacking the quarterback, he is putting a lot of pressure. So I think he has been the best player in Miami's first 2 games of anyone on the field. And their defense has been impressive. They've been impressive on the line of scrimmage in both games. And again, I think when you get into the playoffs, you get down to the last 4 or 5 teams, however many you want to count. It's usually the team that performs best at the line of scrimmage that wins. And so Miami's definitely got a chance to win, and they're playing well. And Beck is, a couple of games they lost during the season, he threw several interceptions, and they seem to have that part under control. And if Miami keeps playing the way they are defensively, and their offensive line blocking well enough for Fletcher, and late in the game, they seem to take over, then Carson Beck is going to make me a liar, because I said a couple weeks ago in 2025 a game manager could not win a national championship, and that's exactly what he's doing right now, is just managing the game and keeping them out of trouble and letting their defense and their running game get them enough points to win. 14 points or 17 points in 2 games is what they've allowed. So you got to give Miami a lot of credit. I still think at some point it's going to end pretty soon, but I'm not ready to say that they can't beat Ole Miss. I think it's going to be a really interesting game, and we'll talk more about that when we talk about just the playoffs and the games in general. But Miami's been impressive. I'll say that. DMAC, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, kind of to echo what you said, it's can Carson Beck just not make mistakes? 138 yards passing, 19 of 26. They ran the ball for 153, 4 yards a carry. So the offense, just didn't make mistakes. If at some point though, I have to wonder is Carson Beck gonna have a struggle game, whether it's this upcoming playoff game against Ole Miss, or if they make it to the championship and play Indiana or Oregon. But yeah, as long as he doesn't make mistakes, I mean, the sky's the limit for this team. The defense is gonna take care of business. That really the entire front seven is phenomenal at Miami. I know Bain gets a lot of the attention, rightfully so. But, Akeem Mesidor was great against Ohio State the other day. He's got 10.5 sacks and 4 forced fumbles on the year, and not really even being talked about all that much. So, the depth that they have is great on defense. So it's gonna be a really good matchup. Them and Ole Miss, but yeah, took care of business against Ohio State, and that brings us to the Oregon Texas Tech game. Want to get us started on that one, Kevin?
Yeah, that was Texas Tech spends a lot of money in the portal, and they look like they're going to reinvest in the portal now. Um, Interesting. It didn't surprise me that Tech's defense was competitive. They have a good defense. What did surprise me was how inept their offense looked. They had some talent on offense, but um, big mismatch yesterday in this game. Oregon dominated again both lines of scrimmage and was able to pull away and win 23-0 in a game that honestly could have been 35-0. The fact that in the first half it wasn't 14-17-0 was amazing to me, considering that Miami had the ball for 22 minutes, had 10 first downs, and Texas Tech had 3 first downs and only had 8 minutes time of possession. I don't know how you could have left your defense out on the field the way they did, and Oregon only had 6 points at halftime in that game. So totally dominant win for Tech, or I can't. Totally dominant win for Oregon, and to me it proved that Tech is still a pretender in this. And the Big 12 is by far the weakest conference currently in this because they dominated the Big 12 and they could not, do anything yesterday. So um, just to and look, I'm really looking forward to the Oregon Indiana rematch. Oregon's a physical team. They've proven that. It was questioned after they lost to Indiana, and they proved it against Iowa and some other teams, USC, and they were definitely physical this game. So I really look forward to the Indiana Oregon game to see, can they keep that physicality up against the most physical team in that. Sweets, what's your thoughts on that one?
So I want to talk about the layoff and the bye. So we're 1-7. Teams with a bye are now 1-7 in the second round of the playoffs in 2 years. So that's not really, it's a trend now. That bye is killing teams. It was talked about. I think it was the Texas Tech coach had said something about it. But obviously there's something there, and I think that the NCAA, the playoff committee's got to come together and get this right, because this is the second year in a row where are they misseeding the teams, or is this bye a bigger issue than than it was originally thought it would be? I think it is. Past that now, Oregon was awesome yesterday. Beat Texas Tech up and down the field, proving the Big 12 was awful. Um, you know, I, I like more. I like Lanning's defense. I like everything about Oregon. I'm really looking forward to this game against Indiana. Really tough to beat a good team 2 times in a season. But I'm gonna tell you what, Indiana's playing really good ball right now. I think that I'm looking forward to it. Kev, what are your thoughts? Or DMAC, what are your thoughts, buddy? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of games where a team wins 23-0 and only accounted for 309 yards of total offense in the game. Texas Tech's defense I thought played really well for about 30 minutes of the game. They were on the field for 38 minutes. Anytime you turn the ball over 4 times and miss a field goal in a playoff game, chances are you're not gonna have a chance to win there. So, Oregon took care of business. I think Dante Moore, no touchdown passes, 1 interception. I think he's poised for a solid game in the Indiana game. Yeah, I'm with you, Sweets, on the bye. It really seems to have an effect, especially on the offenses of these teams,
Yes,
because you're sitting out from December 4th to essentially the new year.
yeah,
Um,
a month.
yeah, a month off, where the other teams played a game recently.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm with you. If
It,
you switch it to 16? Do you just do no buys?
I don't know. It kind of similar to week 0. You know, we've talked about that when in the past when LSU, you know, going up against FSU after FSU had that week 0 game against the Sisters of the Blind. You know, you get a warm up, you get you get something to get the juices flowing and the wheels turning, and that's happened 2 years in a row. So 7, like I said, I don't think the committee is missing that badly, and I don't think they're misseeding all these teams. I think that these buys are just killing these teams offensively. And like I said, proof is in the pudding. Look at the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Except for one game. One game.
Yeah, the one
D-Mac, tell us about that game, D-Mac.
Yeah, Indiana and Alabama. So I'm going to start off with an apology to Curt Cignetti. Early in the season when James Franklin got fired, I made a comment about him catching a little fire. You know, he's definitely a great coach. You know, sitting at 15-0, and yeah, the Alabama Crimson Tide flew all the way to the Rose Bowl to kick a field goal yesterday. So not a good day for the Crimson Tide. Indiana won 38-3. And honestly, outside of the first quarter, you know, watching that game, first quarter, Bama's defense played really well. I thought this was going to be a low scoring, like 13-7, 13-10 type of game. Could go either way. And then Indiana just, you know, hits the races and never stops. Yeah, they're for real this year. You know, Mendoza was as efficient as you can be, 14-16 for 3 touchdowns. They ran the ball for 215 yards. I don't think anybody's done that in a long time against an Alabama defense. So, you know, physical all the way around. You know, I mean, not much more to say other than it was an ass kicking yesterday for Indiana. Really put it to the Crimson Tide. And you know, is the seat starting to get kind of hot over there in Tuscaloosa now? Yeah, people say they made a deal with the devil years ago to win all those championships, and now it might be time to pay up, and it's not looking good for the Tide. What do you think, Sweets?
Well, you know, I mean, listen, it didn't matter who took over for Saban. That you couldn't fill those shoes. The fact that DeBoer has he's been to one playoff. You know, he's lost what 8 games in 2 years now. You know, that's not the Bama standard, but you know, I don't think he's doing awful. I think I think Saban got out at the right time because I'm not sure that Saban could have done a ton of things differently with the way the portal is set up. He just, you know, you can tell the past couple of years the way things were trending. He was getting tired of it, like he had said in several interviews. You know, talking to you know Miss Terry. You know, and the kids and parents aren't talking about development and that stuff anymore. They're talking about how much can you give me today? What can I get today? And you know, so I just think that you know, I think this is going to be tough for Bama or anybody to have a run like that again, especially with the money being thrown around. Indiana, I mean, what can you say? Physical, man. Those guys hit. You know, they're efficient offensively. That they bullied Alabama on the lines of scrimmage. I will say this: if Yonze Pierre wants to get in the transfer portal, I would email Lane Kiffin and say go get him because that dude's a beast. But other than that, you know, Indiana just whooped their asses, and it wasn't close. It wasn't close, and you know, it's going to be another barn burner between them and Oregon. But I'll tell you what, I don't see anybody beating Indiana right now unless Miami's defense can do what they did, and Beck has a an un-Carson like game in the championship, provided they get by Ole Miss. Kev?
Yeah. So let me say one thing to your point about when Saban retired. Saban retired because he knew the talent level was not on that team to win a championship. he wanted to win more championships. He got them into that, Final Four one last time, and they lost to Michigan. He knew at that point he didn't have the team or the talent level to go out and win a national championship. If he would have had it, I think he would have stayed. That being said, he earned everything he got, in that. But he can say, and yeah, the portal played a lot into it because it cost him the depth. But he would have still coached another year or two if he thought he could get, into that Final Four, final championship game.
Ev, can I ask you a question on that while you're talking about that point in particular? But what do you think was stopping him from doing that? Because Bama could have went and spent the money too, like all these other teams are. I mean, do you think that he just was so far out on that he said to hell with it, or do you think Bama didn't have the money that they thought they had to dump into it? What do you think about that?
Well, if you go back to what he said when he made the comments about Jimbo at the alumni event, he basically was telling his fan base, we got to spend more money. So I think that's the simple answer to the question. I don't think that they were at that time one of the heaviest spenders. And so he knew financially they weren't at that time. I think they've came up a little bit since then. And let's be honest, Bama's got a lot of tradition, got a huge fan base, and they have money, but they don't have Texas money. They don't have A&M money, and that kind of stuff. Now, all it takes is 2 or 3 boosters to get behind it. But no, I don't think they had the financial part. And again, I just think he looked at that roster, and I think he knew the roster was not what it was, and it's not been. Look at I want to talk more about the game, but look at who they put in the pros the last couple of years, and who's going to go there this year at the end of the draft. They'll have some players get drafted, but last year Ole Miss had 8. Bama didn't have 8. Bama's not going to have 8 this year. So anyhow, I want to talk about Indiana. Look, Indiana's the most physical team in college football. At the beginning of the season, I wasn't sure about them. Illinois game changed my mind when and the way that they were running the ball at the beginning of the season, averaging over 300 yards rushing a game, made it clear to me what they were about and what Cignetti was about. Cignetti, in an interview this week before the game, someone asked him about, playing Miami and the mystique of Miami. And his comments were, we've watched them on film. We know what we can do. And that's all he said. But you could tell in his face right then, and his voice and his tone, he knew watching Alabama on tape that Indiana was going to take it to them physically. He had full confidence in that. Alabama's not what they were when Saban was there, just from a standpoint of physicality. They're soft. They were soft yesterday. They got killed on the line of scrimmage, and they're a soft team, much like LSU was soft this year. Everybody, talks about how Bama can't run the ball. They're soft. They got a 350-pound left tackle, and they can't run the ball because they're soft. And I think I think if you look again at the SEC, you watched Georgia and Ole Miss last night. Georgia's not near as physical as they used to be. They're still probably the most physical team in the SEC, but they were not dominant physically. And that just, kind of brings me again the point I talked about the other night. The SEC is not the most physical conference anymore. I think if you look at the last 3 years, counting this year, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but I think I would pick Indiana right now to win this. And if they do, your most physical teams the last few years have been Indiana, Ohio State, and then Michigan when they won it. Michigan had a very physical team the year that they won it. So I think the SEC and the coaches in the SEC and have got to look deep inside themselves and say, what do we do to get back to winning games at the line of scrimmage and playing physical if the SEC wants to go back and win a national championship? Now, that being said, there is the potential this year for Ole Miss to win it. But that would be behind Chambliss, who has last night was outstanding, was the best player star in the playoffs. Was so, but Indiana, heck of a performance. Mendoza was really good. His numbers don't astound you, but they don't have to the way that they play. He completed over 80% of his passes. mixed in the running game. Look, that game Indiana could have put 50 on the board. The only reason they didn't put 45 is because they put their backups in, or they would have scored another touchdown. So really outstanding performance by them, just total dominance.
Yeah, that brings us to the late night game down in New Orleans last night, Ole Miss and Georgia. Ole Miss wins this game 39-34 at halftime. It was a 21-12 game. Georgia was up. Sweets, want to get us started on this one?
Very excited for these offensive coaches to be wearing purple and gold this year, not next year, this year. Great game called by Weiss. Chambliss, amazing. Chambliss reminded me of Joe Burrow against Georgia in the SEC championship game in 2019. Every time it looked like they had him dead to rights, he'd spin out of it. He'd run backwards, run sideways, whatever. But he'd buy the extra time and give Stribling and Wallace the time to get open, and they did, and he would hit them. I mean, they had two guys. Wallace had a $156 last night. Stribling had 122. Just a fantastic performance. Lacey had a great game, just under 100 yards, 2 tutties. He did have the fumble. That's going to happen sometimes. It's part of football. Bad time to do it, but it didn't end up affecting them. Ole Miss looked just as physical as Georgia, and I didn't expect that from them. Their defense came to play last night, and while they gave up 30 plus, they got the stops when they needed to, and did enough to get the win. Very impressed with everything. The Eccles kid, that kid's a beast. For Georgia, I forget the kid who got beat on the long play at the end. But they had a good game. KJ Bolden had a good game till he got hurt. What do you do? I mean, Ole Miss just got it when they needed to get it. So hats off to them. DMAC.
Yeah, I mean, what a game. At halftime, I wrote Ole Miss off quite a bit, just like I'm sure most people did. But then Winnidad did what he does and got him back in it and won the game. I was impressed with their defensive physicality for sure. Towards the end there, when Georgia had those last 2 drives where they got points, Georgia went hurry up, kept that Ole Miss defense on the field. That was probably a game plan they should have done a little sooner. Man, it almost feels like it was destiny last night for Ole Miss to get it done. Yeah, Chambliss was great. Lacey was great. I saw their new running backs coach in the Ole Miss gear yesterday down there. Lacey's lucky that he still had Kevin Smith over there with him, or he probably would have only finished with about 45 yards after that fumble.
It'd have been 7.
Yeah. But no, good game for Ole Miss. Really physical football from them. The last 5 seconds of the game was something wild too. The safety on the kick return turns into a kickoff with a second left. The recovery. I've done some logistics for the apparel side of bowl games, and man, I feel bad for those stage guys who got the stage all out and then had to take it back. But yeah, great game, and Pete Golding has two playoff wins right now, and I'm going through my mind of coaches in the SEC with 2 or more playoff wins, and honestly, I know Kirby comes to mind. I don't know. Does Sark have 2, or does he only have 1?
Did he get one last year?
Yeah, he had one win last year.
Yeah,
And
so
that's
I
it.
mean, Pete Golding right now is number 2 in the SEC in playoff wins, and he's only coached 2 college football games as a head coach. So, you know, they've got things cooking over there. We'll see how much of that is, you know, can be harnessed long term. And I know there is, you know, some talks of, you know, what this next game holds for them. I'm under the impression that the coaches that are there are going to continue to coach through the bowl game, but you know we've seen crazy things happen this year, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Charlie Weiss is calling the offense for another game or two over there, or what shakes out that way. Kevin, what are your thoughts on the game?
So Shambles was the best player on offense and the best player in the game. You mentioned Eccles. Eccles was the best defensive player on the field, in my opinion, last night. This is a game, though, that, so I give Golding credit from a standpoint of he kept his team in it, believing that they could win. Down 21-12 after a couple tough decisions. You don't get it on fourth down. Georgia had a moment there ahead 21-12 with a ball on their side of the 50. If they score a touchdown, they probably take the momentum. And Ole Miss's defense hung in there, fought, got a missed field goal, long one, 55-yarder that they missed. So I give Golding credit there for keeping his team upbeat, positive, with a feeling that they could win. Because to me, they were on edge right there, and I question whether they would. I will also say this: both coaches made a lot of mistakes in this game. Golding in the first half, going for it right after half, and then the end of the first half, the time management scenario just totally blew it there. And that's another reason when they went into half, I'm thinking Ole Miss looks out of this just because the decision making in the second quarter, from a coaching standpoint, I thought hurt Ole Miss in that one. And then you get into the second half, and I thought Kirby made a lot of decisions that I think if he looks back upon today, look, these are good coaches. I'm not trying to talk bad about it. I'm just talking about the game. But I think if Kirby looks back on the decisions that he made last night, one, going for it on his side of the 50 when he's down 3, giving up that touchdown, that really put them, everything had to go their way the rest of the game for them to be able to win it. And they almost got it into overtime. But again, everything had to go their way. And then the one biggest mistake that he made was you got a quarterback that is, every time you blitz him, you're not getting him to the ground. They finished with 0 sacks. Secondary sides, at odds, you didn't, the numbers were not on your side if you don't get him down. And so the way that they continue to blitz just boggles my mind, because that cost Georgia that game with their defense. I think they should have been much sounder and mixed it up and played coverage some. Let Chambliss beat you from the pocket versus he gets outside and he finds the wide open guy and he would throw it to him. And that was just like freelance back in the Sandlot where we all played growing up. So, but hats off to Ole Miss, hats off to Chambliss, hats off to Golding for what he's done. And again, you both mentioned him, but I'll mention him to Charlie Weiss. He's proven to be an offensive coordinator because he's definitely got a name that is more etched in stone after these playoffs, the way that he's called games. And, he's played a big role in recruiting that quarterback room too at Ole Miss. So hats off to him. Hats off to that. The coaching, last thing I'll say about that game in the LSU scenario, the coaching part of this, the rest of the way, is very interesting. I do think Weiss will call plays. I don't know about the rest of the offensive staff. The new Ole Miss staff has been setting in on those meetings for the last 2 weeks. There's a lot of talk of Ole Miss filing tampering charges through all this stuff with the portal and all this, which, I mean, look, they've tampered plenty. So, tampering something everybody does. But it's just interesting, those dynamics. How do you file tampering charges and continue to let the rest of that offensive staff be there? I don't know. And the only reason I think they want, Kiffin said that the staff can stay. And so he's let that known they can stay. The only reason they want Weiss is because they know without his play calling, they're going to be in trouble, or they feel that way. And so I think Weiss stays, but I think you could probably see the rest of the LSU offensive coaches end up in Baton Rouge, and Ole Miss's new staff kind of take over from here.
One thing I wanted to say about that fourth down play yesterday, that was not a play. That was a freeze the whole time. That backup freshman center who hadn't played all year snapped the ball when he wasn't supposed to. So they were trying to get Ole Miss to jump right there, and the kid snapped the ball when he wasn't supposed to. I mean, you could kind of tell there was an issue when that left tackle literally did not move, at the snap of the ball, and it was because and you saw Stockton wasn't expecting it either. The play's called freeze, and they just were going out there. They got Ole Miss to call the timeout. So, they had him where they wanted him. They were going to try to see if they could get him to jump. And if not, you punt the ball. But the kid was nervous, and snapped the ball. And, so it wasn't like Smart was going to go for it. A kid made a mistake.
But you put your team in that position, though.
Yeah.
Both Alabama did it. They tried to do the same thing in that first game, and then they took time out and didn't go for it. I think in that position, when you got a chance to punt, it was really closer to 4th and 3, not 4th and 2. I think you got to play sound. He basically said, my defense can't stop you. With Georgia's punter, who's probably the best in the SEC, if not maybe the second best, but an outstanding punter, he punts them inside the 20 from there. You let your defense when would Kirby, when you got a chance to put a team inside their own 20, not take advantage of that in the past? It's just a strange decision to me. And whether it was the snap or not, to me, it wasn't the best sound football move to put yourself in a chance to win. You gave Ole Miss's offense, who was scorching you, a short field.
Last time that happened, I think that I remember, was when he ran Justin Fields out there for a fake punt against LSU in 2018.
Yeah, I think it was actually against Bama in the SEC championship, and it failed, and Bama came back and won that game.
At least 3 then.
Before
Yeah, but
we-
you got to, should he have, shouldn't he have? I understood him trying to get him to jump. You just, I don't know. I know that kid is sick to his stomach today, but it's football. What do you do?
Yeah, before we move on to the transfer portal, for Georgia, one player that they should feel good about going into next year, man, Gunnar Stockton plays with so much toughness. He was essentially assaulted all night last night and kept getting up every time. I think he may be my favorite quarterback in the SEC going into next year. Maybe not the best quarterback, but by far my favorite. He just, man, the way that he played all night last night, and he took some shots. They were all clean shots, but man, that Georgia offensive line did not do him any favors.
Took the hit and ran down on the hurry up play and snuck it from the first and goal and carried it in. And he definitely showed a lot of courage.
Yeah, when no steak dinner for those guys this spring. If I'm Gunner, they may get a candy bar or something, but that's about it. Nothing.
Missing Bobo was the difference in the game.
Yeah,
it really was.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you gotta wonder if Todd Monken was still at Georgia, would this have been a different story too?
They'd have 3 titles at least, and yes, they'd have won that game by 10 points.
Yeah. So let's segue to the transfer portal. There's a I mean, tons of guys still entering today. Well, I guess they all officially entered today, but I think we're at a little over 2,000 in the portal right now. Sweets, anything sticking out to you right now from guys who have entered today or in the last day or two?
It's there's going to be more to come. Um, I'm looking at it right now, and I'm looking at some of the NIL valuations on these guys, and I chuckle because on the board sometimes you see people, oh, you can't talk about these kids. They're college kids. Listen, you're making 2.5 a year. Take all the criticism you can hear because that's what you're getting paid for. You ain't getting paid to be coddled. If you don't want to be coddled, turn down the money. Or if you want to be coddled, turn down the money. If you accept that money, expect everything that comes with it, good, bad, and ugly. I think there's a ton of talent, and I think there are going to be more people to get in there. There haven't been a ton of people that have already landed places. I guess the Mestmaker kid from North Texas is going to go to OSU. Is that right, Kev?
Yeah,
Um,
3.4 million.
you know, Other than that, I haven't seen a ton of the kid from Wake is going to Texas Tech. The defensive lineman. Just scrolling through a few of these. A lot of talent in there, but it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you. The one thing that there's not a ton of right now is offensive linemen, which LSU is in need of offensive linemen. So I'm curious to see whether more jump in or if teams are realizing that, hey, it starts on the line of scrimmage and you got to lock these guys down, so they're doing that and not giving them the opportunity to negotiate with other teams. I don't know. Thoughts, D-Mac?
Yeah, I mean, today the biggest name for me is probably Dante Dowdell, the running back from Kentucky. He was their number two back this year. Really solid player. I don't know where he'll end up, but he's going to be a good number two back for somebody in the country. Or if he finds the right, opportunity, he could be a RB1. I know LSU has, I think Sorsby's coming to LSU tomorrow or Sunday. If he gets out of Lubbock. Um, so that'll be something to monitor. I was really surprised with, the news around Sam Levitt and Kentucky, which has led to Cutter Boley hitting the portal. Their fan base was really pumped up when he signed a deal to stay another year. A lot of, I mean, it's day one, so there's going to be a ton of things that happen over the next 48 hours especially, but man, there's no shortage of quarterback, or really the edge position. I feel is pretty deep um in the portal this year too. And man, the early indications are these Texas teams are going to pay a lot of money. I'd like to see, at the end of the portal, how much money was spent just in the state of Texas to get these kids there, between A&M, Texas, and then Texas Tech. Even Houston's spending some money or preparing to. So it's
D-Mac,
going to
those
be
three teams over under 100 million.
over.
Over
Yeah.
120.
That's actually reported. I would say you'll have a reporting of, those teams probably all spent 30 million, but I would say that it's probably going to be close to 150.
So there's a lot of funny money in there.
Yeah, I mean, there's still like, we're still in the Wild West a little bit with this, and there's no true checks and balances system like the NFL at least has a salary cap.
That's what I said. This is the greatest football system in the world for a player, because there's nothing that anybody can do to stop you from going anywhere when
Yeah.
you want to.
I
I mean,
mean,
you
what
may
are
not be able to play immediately, but you can play the next year. You don't have to sit out a year anymore.
yeah, what is college football gonna do when, a team like Texas spends like, 600 million in 5 or 6 years if there's nothing, no parameters put around? Because I mean, I think in 5 years, if there's not changes made, a quarterback could be at the $20 million mark.
I was gonna say 10, but yeah, I mean it's they've got to do something, and the NCAA is too feckless to do anything. So you can't rely on them to. They're begging the government to step in. I'm not sure what the government can do. I mean, they can give them I guess a template to go off of or something. I don't know, but these kids, just all the people who wanted this. I hope you're happy. I hope you're enjoying this. And I hope that your team loses every player that you wanted to keep, because you had to have this money for these kids. And listen, I think the kids should be compensated. I have a kid that's in college right now, plays football D3, so he's not a scholarship. He's not, fully vested, none of that jazz. He's not getting, he's got one NIL deal with this great apparel company, but nothing else other than that. So when these kids are the average scholarship for these kids per year is 100,000 plus, with schooling, medical, training, and all the other stuff. So it's not like these kids are indentured servants. They've got to do something. I think, if you capped it at 1 million a year, what the hell else is a 19-year-old going to do to earn 1 million a year? A 19-year-old college student, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to do something, and people whine and say, "Oh, it's not fair. You can't limit their earnings," but you can. You certainly can. You have to draw it up, so it's capped, or whatever, and they got to do something, because it's already out of control.
Yeah, and it's so hard once you give something and set a precedent of where we're at now.
Um,
It's so hard to come back to a lower price point than
no, exactly. You can always go up, but you can't go back, and that's you look at LSU. I don't know if it's argument or whatever, with specifically with LSU kids, but when LSU came back and says we have X amount that we're going to spend in the portal this year, that was like blood in the water. All those kids said, "Oh, shit, I need me a piece of that." So if I go into the portal, they can either talk to me and try to make me right, or I've got the option to go elsewhere. That's just insane. Um, I didn't like it to begin with, and I was hoping that it would be something that would be minimal, but it's went from crazy to just batshit insane in literally no time. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know who stops it. Who do you think can step in and change this? Government? I mean,
I think you've got to have a sit down between the four Power Four commissioners, and they've got to set a guideline
yeah,
together. Now, they're all going to be focused on their conference, their personal interest. But I think it takes the four of those guys, specifically the SEC and the Big Ten, to sit down, come up with some sort of guideline on how they're going to govern.
yeah.
Because I think the NCAA is a joke. Yeah, they've got no power. We could have avoided what we're seeing now if you just gave kids a couple $1,000s and a video game 12 years ago.
Yeah, I mean,
You
yeah,
could have you could have been ahead of it, tiered it off, and you wouldn't be where you are now.
we're going to give each kid 5,000 a month, whatever. I mean, so that's 60,000 a year, and along with everything else, you're getting the free education, the medical, all that stuff. And like I said, what are these kids going to do for money otherwise? there was always going to be money under the table. So doing it the way that we just talked about wasn't going to change that, but it would have kept it from going, to where it is now, because I don't think kids were getting 10 million pre, pre NIL. They just weren't. We've both heard some of the stories and know people and stuff. It never happened. So, there were some solid numbers out there, but nothing like it is now.
Yeah.
I,
Kids were getting a Dodge Charger and a little bit of spending cash.
there you go.
Now they're getting Lamborghinis and millions.
Yeah, yeah, Lamborghinis some are trying to buy an island in the Caribbean together. It's wild. It's wild, but I do hope that it gets fixed, because for me it's taken a little bit of the luster off of college football. These kids, like I said, they don't play for the school anymore. They play for themselves and their entourages and everything else. And every kid's got, all his boys and his handlers and his third grade coach who told his mom he was going to be a superstar one day. And all these people got their hand out, and they're all getting greased. It's wild. It used to be, that you could bring in a guy like your buddy, and I'll tell you the name offline, because I don't want to put anything out there for public consumption. But who could pay a coach 5,000. Hey, look out for me with the kid. I got you, coach. I'm in with the family. That used to happen often. Now that's chump change. These kids are wanting that to go on a podcast. You ever heard of that? Somebody wanting money to go on a podcast?
Yeah.
Pretty wild, huh?
Yeah, it's just a crazy time, and luck. The only thing is, with all sports, for the major three: baseball, football, basketball. I'm glad that baseball isn't to the level that football and basketball have become. 'Cause, I mean, you've got basketball teams spending 20,
Oh
25,
yeah,
30
yeah,
million for a roster of 12.
yeah.
There's yeah, there's got to be a limit on the booster funds. Now, if a kid signs a deal with, McDonald's or, Chick-fil-A or, something like that, I think, if you put a limit, you can put a limit on booster or, the funds that the schools themselves have. I'm okay with a kid signing endorsement deals with brands. But that's not, we see that, but the money's not coming from those brand endorsement deals.
No, and that's what that when they said name, image, and likeness. Welcome back, Kev. Hope you're safe down there. When they said name, image, and likeness, that's exactly what I thought it was going to be. Was the opportunity to make money off of your brand. So you could do a commercial for that Dodge dealership. You could support a local, be on a commercial for a local restaurant, have a signing at a local card shop, put, whatever. That's what I thought it was going to be. But this isn't name, image and likeness. This is just contracts. These are just pay for play contracts.
And
These kids aren't.
unenforceable contracts at that.
Say it again.
Unenforceable
Oh,
contracts
exactly.
at that. It's all
Exactly.
free money.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's it's
It's
it,
it's it's the damnedest thing, and like I said, it's getting worse. Hopefully they're able to do something about it. Kev, we were talking about NIL and how quickly it spun out of control. With the spending and team spending. We talked about the Texas schools, where they'd be at for just the bit, Texas A&M and Texas alone. Those three, would they spend 120 million in NIL money this season? Just the three of them, stuff like that. I mean, that's insane. That's insane. I know you've got some strong thoughts on it, but why don't you tell us about it?
Well, so it goes back to when Mark Emmert was the president of the NCAA. First of all, he wasn't ready for it. He did not accept that it was coming. Congress told him twice, and he did nothing, and so no preparation. So then they go get Charlie Baker, and he makes some steps and gets things in a little better place, and then boom, we're just in a holding pattern here. And I think, I felt this last year, and it's even more so this year because of the playoff and the non-power fours. College football needs a commissioner, but a commissioner that you've got to have somebody that's got the respect of everyone. They need a commissioner for 12 to 15 months. Everybody knows it. And give him the attorneys he needs, give him the autonomy with those attorneys to solve things. And everybody knows it. Everybody speaks about it. And everybody has, well, maybe not everybody. There are so many people that are close to the game that mention one name to help solve this. And the interesting thing last night, and more than just last night, but Herbstreit brought it up again last night, pointed to the guy, and the guy said he's willing to do it for the game of football. And, a year ago, I thought that Charlie Baker and the college football commissioners would approach this person to do it. And today I'm sitting here wondering, why the hell are you not? But it's a simple answer, and he's willing to do it. Saban needs to be the commissioner. Give him 12 to 15 months, and the one thing that college football does not want to go, the place they don't want to go right now, is collective bargaining. I'm sorry. You're going to have to go there. It's better than where you're at. They don't want it, but it's worse. Right now it's worse. So, like you guys said, these are not enforceable contracts. You got people paying $30-40 million, for their total salary of their teams. That it was going to be capped at 20. You can't cap it unless you bring collective bargaining in it. And they're sitting there waiting for an exception for the government to pass an exception for them. And we've been 12, 15 more months since Emmert passed and Baker comes in, and now he's enrolled 2 or 3 years, and we're just in a stalemate because there's no leadership. There's an absolute lack of leadership, and that's where you need someone like Saban who understands the game. He would be the one that could make the tough decisions because he's proven he would do that in the past. Again, give him the attorneys. The college football commissioners need to get together, and that's what Herbstreit said last night. The college football commissioners need to get together and invite him, and they need to all sit down and say, this is what's best, and they need to go forward. And he sat there right on TV and said, I would be willing to do it for the love of the game. It's a simple thing to get it started. I'm not saying the solutions are simple. There's a lot of complexity to them. And that's why I say give him the attorneys he needs, because there will be some complexity. But look, guys, if we don't do something in the next 2 years, college football will still be good and it'll still be what it is. But you're going to see schools fall by the wayside in this. The money that they're going to spend, you're going to get some schools to get disheartened. You're going to get some boosters that fall out of this, and you're going to get some schools that just, much like in Arkansas that over the last 15 years has just fallen. You're going to have some good programs do that. Last thing I'll say to the example of that, Troy Aikman said it this week. If you all saw what he said, he wrote a check for a player at UCLA. Player stayed 1 year and left. Aikman says, I'm out. I'm not doing this. Player never called him, said anything, to him, never got a thank you, never got anything. And, obviously they weren't that good. You're going to have more boosters that do that. As long as their team is winning, the money will be there. But the money that's being thrown around right now, it's crazy. You have more money being thrown around than some Major League Baseball teams spend right now. Some of your small market teams. It cannot continue.
Okay, you're exactly right. I don't know who takes the first step. But I mean, Saban is as respected as anybody in the game. So that would be who you would want running. I can't think of anybody better from that standpoint, just as a figurehead, if nothing else. And then you've got to, there are going to be some tough decisions that need to be made. And there are just going to be some people that aren't happy, but you're exactly right. What a lot of people outside of who don't know a thing about academia. Not that I do. I'm not trying to say that, but what I'm saying is that football helps support so many other things at these schools that's really important to these schools. And with all that money being dumped back into the football, it takes away from everything else, and that's not what college is supposed to be about. Like I said, if they're going to do this, just make it a minor league system, attach schools to NFL teams, and have a minor league system or something. But something's got to change. It's got to change quick.
You got any thoughts, D-Mac?
Man, I mean, the commissioners of the Power Four have got to get together. If Nick becomes commissioner, they've got to sit down and, I think it starts with the SEC and the Big Ten. I know Notre Dame loves their NBC money, but I think the future of college football is got to be to end the independence too. If you're not in a Power Four competing like a Power Four team, if you have understandings between these commissioners, there's never going to be an understanding between a team like Notre Dame. So I mean, there's so many issues. I mean, we could spend days just talking about the issues. But I think it was like 1998. Steve Spurrier was pitching to the NCAA paying players. Hey, we've got to give these kids some money. And back then he was talking $1,000, $2,000 a game, $24,000 a year, which would have grown, but I don't think we would be in the situation we're in now. I know Mark Emmert was at LSU at one point, but a lot of these problems stem from his leadership with the NCAA, and you just
He totally checked out as the leader. He totally ignored it.
Yeah, I mean, I use this terminology for creativity a lot, and it's not a diss on older people by any means, but I go back and forth with my dad all the time. NCAA, you've got a bunch of old dudes who have run it for years. Then you look at an offense like Lane Kiffin's offense with Charlie Weiss, these young position coaches. The innovation is there's got to be, it can't just be an old man's club. You've got to invite some other people into the table to discuss.
How old is old?
I'm talking like 70s.
Okay.
Like how old's Mark Emmert now? He's got to be in his late 70s.
Yeah. Well, when you said old, and then you said Kiffin, I was like, Kiffin's 50, isn't he? Yeah, I mean, but
he brings this idea of youthfulness to college football.
No, he's a hip 51.
Yeah, but you look at Iowa, Kirk Ferentz, one of my favorite defensive-minded coaches. Look at where that's offense has been for the longest time. And I have no clue how old their OC was this year, but if I'm guessing, he was a little bit younger of a guy and not family. And look, they
the
beat
family thing was
yeah. The old ways don't always continue to work.
Right.
Because
I think it's adaptability. I don't necessarily think that it can be an age thing, absolutely. But again, you look at Saban, you look at Kiffin, those guys are not young and they're adaptable. And Saban won for all those years because he changed and he was adaptable. To your whole point, D-Mac, you have to change. Times changes. Things change over a generation. So you do need some young ideas. But man, you need some leadership right now.
Yeah. And I'm by no means saying put a whole bunch of 20s and 30s in charge of everything at all. That would be almost as disastrous, if not more, in the opposite way. The people get so used to being in the power positions and think that they're on top and they don't have to change. You see empires crumble due to that thinking, and you know
Yep.
the the NCAA needs to avoid crumbling, which I think they're on the brink of right now. You already can't afford all the other sports on your campus at a lot of places right now. If you keep sinking more money into football for some of these schools who are never going to win a championship,
Yep.
yeah, you're just digging yourself in more of a shortfall, which is going to lead to tuition spikes,
Yep.
buildings falling apart on campuses. Also, you can win a football championship.
Also, you can go
I
even.
love I love football as much as everybody else, but I mean, man, there is a little bit more to life than college football.
And that's what I began with is college football supports so much at a lot of these schools, and for the narrow-minded thinking that, well, football's making the money, so it all should go back into football. That's just it's just not it's just not feasible, and it's not how it ever should be. um but hopefully at the end of the day, like I said, Saban or somebody will get in there. First and foremost, you need somebody who's respected, and that's why Saban would be a great choice. But second of all, you've got to get people together quickly, and you've got to get everybody rowing the boat together. If not, like you said, you're gonna start to see, a lot of the group of five schools, and even some P4 schools start falling by the wayside. And if they don't fall by the wayside, then you'll see other programs, like you said, DMAC. You'll see other programs that start falling by the wayside. You'll see teams cutting wrestling, gymnastics, golf, baseball in some cases. Track and field is not a money making sport. So there are a lot of schools that are going to lose a lot of programs and cost hundreds of millions of dollars in scholarships to these kids who aren't going to have an opportunity now because everything's got to go back to football.
Yeah, because right now there is no football without the university. And you're making that argument. There's no university without the football. So, yeah, they've got to work together. But if you let this drag out too much, then there's just no university and it's a developmental football league. These 17, 18, 19-year-olds aren't going to school. They're, leaving high school, playing football in this big money developmental league. And that's where a disaster really happens. When you've got 18-year-old kids getting 5, 10, 15 million a year with no education, nobody looking out for them. Because once it goes to no longer a student athlete thing, yeah, there's not people caring anymore. So it needs to change quick, and really by the time the championship game's over, there needs to be a plan moving forward, and I don't think there will be in the next 20 days.
I agree. And look at it like this: if they did go to a developmental league, okay, just forget college. College football no longer exists now. If you want to play college football, it's like a D2, D3, NAIA, like what Larry's doing, something like that. That will be college football. This developmental league, they're not going to make the money that they do right now. You look at like the D League, for the NBA. What are those kids are making? I mean,
Yeah.
5 figures, right?
Yeah.
I don't think there are a lot of 6-figure guys in the developmental league. Are there going to be a bunch of millionaires running around in 18-year-old millionaires in a developmental football league? No. No, you're going to see, 50,000, 75,000, maybe 150, something like that. But one knee injury, and now you got a 19-year-old kid with no education to fall back on. No football. He can't play football anymore. Knee's gone. What does he do?
You'd have a lot of new fry cooks entering the job market.
Yeah, because it's just not a lot of.
You're not gonna. It's not gonna go to developmentally. You're still gonna have college football. The thing is you're going to lose sports like you guys have mentioned, and you're going to lose programs. This is going to get really top heavy quickly because of the money chase. The Texas A&Ms, the teams that will pay the most will be up there, and then you're going to have a few teams that can pay a good amount and have a really good coach like Indiana. That coaching will win out. So you're going to have 5 to 8 teams that really compete at a high level in this, maybe 10, and then you're going to have everybody else that goes, just that there's totally average. And so then you get into the attendance and like I said, you got programs. I referenced Arkansas because of where they fallen in the last 20 years. They're legitimately the worst team in the SEC right now. And 20 years ago, they won the SEC West a couple of times. You're going to have teams that fall just like them through this financial thing, and you're going to have programs get cut. And that's what it's going to be if they don't solve it. And right now, the college commissioners don't act like they want to solve it. It's really a bureaucracy, and that's the sad and the disappointing part. The SEC commissioner and the Big Ten commissioner need to step forward and do it. If you would have had, I can't think of the last. What's the last? Not Sankey, because to me he's weak. The last SEC commissioner before Sankey.
Oh, dang. You're gonna make me look this up.
Yeah, I'm googling it too. Because if you had him or the one where they,
Oh, Mike Slive.
yeah, if you have Mike Slive or the SEC commissioner when they went to the SEC championship game, you had guys there that again were innovative that did things. Those people would want to get someone in charge and to solve this thing. Again, Sankey is exactly what you said earlier. He's riding the coattails, doesn't want to change. He's stagnant. But you've got to get some leadership, and you got to go to change this stuff.
Tell you if Miami wins a championship, Big Ten and SEC may be ready to come to the table. Then
that would be a surprise because I can promise you, at the beginning of December, you could have got long odds on an ACC team being the national championship winner. You could have got long odds on that.
Yeah, could you imagine betting that right after Duke wins the ACC? Say, hey, an ACC team's gonna win the national championship.
They didn't even know if a team was going to get in at that point. It was yeah. And now here Miami is in the semis.
Yeah, conference championship weekend. There was a lot of debate whether they would even get a team in it, and now they got a team in the finals or semifinals anyway. Oh. Just at the semifinals. So
LSU. I was going to say LSU portal action. D-Mac, you got anything for us?
Yeah, 20 guys in the portal right now for the Tigers. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 offensive linemen, 2 running backs, and 4 wide receivers. that's 14 of the 20 are offensive guys. And then you throw in a quarterback that's in the portal. 15. So defense did its job retaining guys for sure at LSU. From the defensive guys that entered the portal, you expected to lose, I think, all of them pretty much. I'm looking at portal guys from defense. Ahmad Bros, the only one who really played a meaningful snap this year on defense in a rotation role. So, defense.
What the hell is Kyle Parker doing?
That's all Hankton. He's tight with Hankton, and Hankton wants him at Ohio State.
Oh, he can go to Ohio State and play behind those guys. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
I'm
that's what
I'm
that
not
was.
I'm not stuck on we had to keep him. I thought he progressed well this year. Um, but I think we can go get 4 or 5 or 6 guys out of the
Oh yeah,
portal who are gonna be better than.
yeah. He just like I said, you just look at somebody who was starting to develop. Who's starting to get time and some looks. But it says if he goes to Ohio State, good on him. Good on him. Good luck up there.
Yeah, and then, man, 8 offensive linemen hitting the portal. Honestly, a few of these guys I had forgotten about, even being on the team.
Yeah, Joel Rogers or not Joel Rogers, Ethan Callaway.
Yeah.
Got him
You know, Joel Rogers is a guy I would have liked I mean, I get it, he wants to go play, but I would have liked to see him develop another year. Um, and then, 2 years from now, going into his redshirt junior year, being able to be a playmaker for us. But yeah, I mean, he hadn't really played much, really any meaningful snaps. He played some special teams for us. But he's going to be good if he goes to a lower end power four or a good group of five. He's going to be a good player for somebody at that level next year.
I mean, where's Mubanga maybe goes with his little brother to Arkansas.
Arkansas had some decent linemen. I grant they graduated some of them though.
And
Yeah,
DJ Chester's going to Kentucky for a visit, I think, or
South
Tennessee,
Carolina,
South Carolina.
good for
where
him.
that they finished second when he committed originally. I don't know that they'll get him. I think he would go there gladly. Let me say that.
It'll get him closer to home. I think ideally he'd like to go to Auburn, but I don't know that Auburn wants him. Auburn has needs because they had a few guys go in the portal, and Connor Lew, the center that should have played for LSU, is he committed. He's entered the draft as a true junior with a blown knee. So
Yeah,
they're going to be hurting for linemen as well.
when I look at teams as a whole, I don't think LSU is hurt by the guys leaving in the portal by any means. But you were mentioning Auburn, Sweets. I mean, they lose Deuce Knight, Cam Coleman, Xavier Chaplin, Donovan Starr, the freshman who was playing good for him, Robert Woodyard, Kyan Lee, Malik Blockton, Jay Crawford. Let me get down to all their other receivers leaving: Malcolm Simmons, Ratio Fields, Perry Thompson. Yeah, they got hit. And Damari Alston, I know he left the team, so he was definitely going to portal. But man, they lost some good guys, and then they lost some offensive linemen too. They've I'm even going to throw Ashton Daniels on that list of guys. What heck? We'll throw Jackson Arnold in there too. They lost all three of their quarterbacks. I know that can happen with a coaching change, but Auburn, just kind of looking at it, may have been bit the most by the transfer portal from a talent level exiting.
You got to throw Florida in there. I think Auburn is definitely maybe the most, but Florida's lost a lot too. Florida and Auburn, to me, are the two teams that have lost a lot. And then Kentucky, unless they backfill,
Yeah.
if losing Boley is a loss. Now, granted, there's a lot of smoke around Levitt and $4 million to Kentucky. If that comes through, then you could understand Boley leaving. But Kentucky's lost some, and Florida and Auburn's lost a lot.
Did Jaden Ball hit the portal, or is he out of eligibility?
No, he's only a junior, so this was only his sophomore year. So the rumors was that he would enter the portal, and Texas is the team after him. Texas got rid of their whole running back room. Florida's went and met with him and trying to keep him out of it. But, again, every other running back at Texas, C.J. Baxter, Wisner, they're all gone. So it sure looks like they're opening it up to get Ball if they can get the deal done.
Yeah, I mean, if Ball leaves Florida, that's 4 running backs that left there. Trayon Webb, Jacoby Jackson hit the portal too, and then KD Daniels left. Florida may have been hit just as hard actually. When you look at that wide receiver room too.
What do you guys think about Lance Hurd hitting the portal?
LSU needs to go get him.
I mean, I thought he'd, the way he talked, I thought he'd be in the NFL after year 3 for sure, but he apparently didn't like what he was told by the NFL. So he's going to come back to college and probably make 1.5, 1.8 more.
I think 2 to 2.5.
Ooh. How many college linemen make $2 million a year right now?
You're gonna see
not many.
You're gonna see the top guys in this portal class though make that. I think
it's definitely possible.
He is the top, and like I said, right now, at present, that's the thinnest position group in the portal right now. I think is the offensive line.
Supply and demand. If there's not a lot of them out there,
yep,
somebody that dollar sign is fixing to go up.
Let's see. I'm going through some other teams. Marvin Burks hitting the portal from Missouri today. That's pretty big news. LSU needs to add one safety.
Is he non-contact? I mean, because didn't Baker recruit him?
Yeah.
Yeah, Baker recruited him.
Yeah.
Now somebody put in our group chat today, and he was on my fantasy team this year. He does get called for targeting quite a bit. The way he plays, but he would be a guy that I would want us to go after, for sure. Let's see. I'm looking at Oklahoma now. Oklahoma kind of did okay. I mean, they've got a lot of portal guys, but not a huge amount of guys that I would really consider huge blows, like Kobe McKenzie. May sting a little bit, but they're pretty good there. Let's see. Going through South. Let's see who left South Carolina. Oh, Vandravius Jacobs left today. He's fast. Then my guy Aaron Nolan, our QB2 next year here at LSU.
Listen, Aaron Nolan is. I don't know if he'd be QB2 at Georgia State. Okay.
Ground Nolan.
Brian Rowe, that's a loss for South Carolina, the freshman receiver. Let's see who's obviously Hurd left. Ricky Gibson, leaving Tennessee, is a cornerback that I think you could take a look at.
Parker Livingston leaving Texas. If I'm LSU and I need wide receivers, there's one that you can go get right there that, we were talking about Parker earlier. Livingston would fit that role really well as a good number 3, 4 guy, possession receiver, get first downs.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like him a lot. And wasn't he roommates with Arch?
This is true.
That's kind of a surprising deal, in my opinion. I mean, even if they were to get a Cam Coleman, like there's still a place for that kid. So, I wonder what's going on inside there. Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of good receivers in the portal.
No,
Now,
in our offense, I don't think that we're going to need. I mean, you'd love to have a Cam Coleman. Cam Coleman, that I've got a better chance of starting at wide receiver at LSU next year than he does. But we don't need that one, superstar receiver. I think that, Kiffin's offense, he spreads the ball around. You're gonna have, you probably have 3 guys next year, maybe 4 with Trey Dez, that are above 500-600 yards receiving.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that Ole Miss team next year or this year.
yep.
Stribling was good. Kyan Lee was good. Who?
Wallace.
Yeah, Wallace was good, but like none of those guys are premier wide receiver ones.
No, Wallace was a 2 at Penn State. Stribling was probably a 1 at Oklahoma State. But that being said, he wasn't dominant in a weak league. Um, so no, none of those guys were SEC ones.
No, Wallace had a hell of a game last night.
Yeah, I
But,
mean
but
that's what the Lane Kiffin system does, and Charlie Weiss system. You don't have to go get a Ryan Williams, a Cam Coleman. You can get a bunch of good wide receivers, guys who are just good, and you're gonna elevate their game as well. So let's see how
and,
they
and
did with the portal.
let me say one more thing on that wide receiver point. You go get 3 or 4 guys that are really good number 2s that catch the football. That's the one thing that Ole Miss's receivers, they did not drop the football this year. And sometimes your number 1's really athletic and can make big plays, but they can have some drops. Go get 4 really good solid 2s that don't have drops. And again, Parker Livingston would be one of them.
Let's see. Let me pull up the go back to the wide receiver room here. Wide receiver position in football. Let's see. Let me go top here. Because you've got we've had 2 guys schedule visits with LSU, right? Terrell Anderson and then the kid from, is it UAB?
UAB. Yes, the kid from UAB.
Geez, where's
And there's actually a third, but I'm drawing a blank right now. But I think there are 3 wide receivers that have actually scheduled visits.
have we scheduled anything with Nick Marsh yet?
It's not come out publicly, but again, obviously, a lot of people thought we were, in his top 2.
Yeah. But geez, you've got a ton of good receivers. I mean, there's probably 40, 45 receivers who I think could be quality guys here at LSU that are in the portal. And you just need 5 of them. Just get 11% of those guys to LSU.
Yeah, and we talked about him the other night, Marquise Johnson from Missouri. If you want 3, 4 solid guys, you go get them, and then you get a Johnson that runs a 10-2 that can take the top off. That's proven.
Yeah.
There's plenty of options.
Yeah. Wide
And
receiver.
I'll say,
Wide receiver is going to be fine.
yeah, I think so. I also think they'll get one or two of those offensive linemen of the 8 back. I think the offensive line was coached down. I do think there's some talent scenarios there. I do think there's some softness there. And, I'm not going to call names, but there's one or two I would not go get because they're soft. But I think you'll get a couple of those guys back before it's all said and done that have potential.
Off the top of your head, which ones?
I know they want Kern back, but I don't know if they can get him. There seems to be a lot of peer pressure for him to go back in state to Arkansas. But if Kern would commit to come back, they would gladly take him back. I think Adams is someone that they're trying to get back, and I don't blame him there for that. I think he would, if he's coached well, I think he would be really good. I wouldn't be surprised if Colin Eccles ends up coming back. I think they'll try to get him back, whether it be guard or depth at center. I think there's those would be the three that right off the top of my head that I think you would see them try to push back the most or try to get back.
I wonder, I didn't hear much about it during the year, but you've heard
Oh,
after Kern went in about, practice issues. Maybe he's a little lazy, not a hard work. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but he's got a ton of talent.
Ori Williams was the other one that I think you could see them try to push to get back.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think Adams. I don't think Adams comes back.
He might not.
He's getting a lot of interest, and I don't. Now there's a chance if we miss on a few other tackles, that could resurface soon. But I don't think this staff wants to pay maybe what he's gonna command. But heck, if the tackle position, and I mean a little bit of a pipe dream, but if you go get Lance Hurd, Xavier Chaplin, and Josh Atkins from Arizona State, you're not going to get all three of those guys. But if you land two of those three, you're in a great spot.
Yep. This is true.
So, any last minute thoughts on the portal before we wrap up tonight?
No, I see. I was just going through some things here. I see Byron Brown committed he followed his coach to Auburn, so it wasn't a total surprise. But he was somebody that I would have been overly upset with if LSU could have landed him. So that's another one that we don't have to worry about. There weren't any rumblings or anything of interest. Rocco Beck, Penn State.
Yeah.
See, Luke Reynolds is going from Penn State to Vatech, tight end. So yeah, so there's some people who are starting to sign. Penn State signed a few kids today. They got one from Iowa State.
Yeah, they're going to get a lot of those Iowa State guys to follow
Campbell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Indiana took TCU's quarterback.
That's a good one.
Yeah, he's highly rated too. I had heard a rumor that Dampier might transfer to Michigan. And if he does, that'll be really interesting to see what happens with Underwood. Because I don't think Dampier would be going to Michigan to watch following his coach. But I don't know. That would be. I can't see it happening. But I was told that there's talk.
One guy on the defensive from the edge perspective that I'd love to get. I know we're in for Chaz Coleman, but John Henry Daly from Utah.
Yeah.
He's so good.
Yeah.
He is. And I think we will try to talk to him, but again, does he not follow Whittingham straight over to Michigan? If he doesn't, I think we have a shot at getting him.
Do we have a Mormon on staff at LSU?
I don't
I'm
know.
sure they can come up with somebody.
We need
I've tried to get since Orgeron. I've tried to get a Polynesian on staff. I'm telling you, it would go. No bullshit, D-Mac. It goes a long way with recruiting those kids.
Wendell Gregory is a name to watch for LSU also.
yeah.
He's a Marietta guy. Played at Oklahoma State last year as a freshman. Played at Walton.
Yeah, because I think Jaden Woods is going to be Texas bound.
Which, speaking of, LSU's likely to get a commitment from a 27 edge guy tomorrow. Jaden Bryant, top 50 kid out of South Carolina, edge guy. Obviously, the new defensive line coach Lucas was the one recruiting him to there, and supposedly he's going to commit tomorrow.
Nice. Anything else, Sweets? You got any wrap up thoughts?
No, sir. No, sir. I hope everybody has a happy 2026.
Yeah.
Grow with sports, Southern Sports Gumbo. Tell a friend, tell an enemy. Tell your mom's bridge club, whoever.
Yeah. Tell anybody you know about us, and yeah, I'm sure we'll go live Tuesday for sure, but we may fit in an episode before then as some of these portal dominoes start to fall. So if you subscribe to us, you get the notification on your phone to turn us on. So come talk some college football with us and all the issues that come with it. All right, have a great night.
Sure.